Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the recent supposed advances that have become now common knowledge in the public domain about advances in AI produced by the Chinese. Now, as we know, the Chinese state sort of controls and directs pretty much everything in China. So we can be reasonably confident this is a government initiative, but they have supposedly got the jump on the West in AI and the ability to deliver it at a low cost into, again, the public domain. Now, how this is going to play out over time, we look at AI and it's a bit of an amorphous miasma. But it's going to go into things like robotics, automation in industry, weapons systems, of course, and vehicles and machines and goodness knows what that don't need operators or don't need pilots and all sorts of stuff. So it's the potential ramifications of AI are almost unlimited and endless. And so whoever gets the jump on it, and whoever gets ahead and whoever has the best AI that is the country or the company or the business that's going to have, or potentially at least establish technical supremacy over all others. So the stakes are fairly high, and again, it's early days on how that's going to play out. But the concern is that do the Chinese, and to even some extent do the Indian AI developers, are they ahead of the West, ahead of the United States and other Western countries? Let's see on that. It's early days. I think the time to panic probably isn't now. But if they are, and it would seem that at least China is pulled level with the West, if not ahead. So that would suggest that the West has. I don't think the Chinese advances are particularly notable. I think it's more that the West has fallen behind and has lost its way. And this is something that President Trump has, I think, realized and wants to do something about. So what could be done, or why has the West fallen behind? Well, I came across, and this is pretty much a classic scenario that is playing out across universities and even major corporations right around the Western world. There is an absolute fanatical obsession with equity programs, social engineering, and this is retarding, horribly, aggressively, viciously retarding all sorts of technical progress across numerous fields. And now, when this idea of social equity and social engineering, social justice warrior type engineering and equity outcomes, and why don't we have more women in the boardrooms? When all that sort of stuff began, I was in the IT industry at the time, which is 100% male dominated pretty much. And I noticed when I first started going to the United States, the sort of noises and things that the early iteration of the globalist project, if you like, was that they particularly wanted to establish equity programs in advanced technology environments. So this, they thought, would capture the future for equity programs. So why do we want to go and put equity programs into digging holes in the road or mining or why do we want to do it? No. We want to install equity programs in the most advanced futuristic technology workplaces. We want to have equity programs there. That's where we want it, because we can then install equity in the future. We can own the future. We can have equity as a standard practice and process going forward. So as the whole world is going to be computerized, it's going to be IT, it's going to be, technology communications. So that's where we want to stay. So that, and I noticed that sort of as, again, I was a fairly young man then, but I noticed that, particularly going to the United States, that they were aggressively and madly sticking women into into IT positions that they weren't even remotely or minimally qualified for. But that didn't sort of seem to matter. Like, people weren't even thinking along those lines. The thought was that we're socially engineering a future nirvana, a paradise, and we're installing that social engineered architecture now in the most advanced areas of the economy, that being, you know, computers and so on. So that was the thought, and they achieved that fairly quickly, again through fairly high-handed methods. There's nothing organic about it at all. You know, if you really wanted to make it work, you know, you'd start hiring like trainee sales reps as women, and they'd be very careful selection of applicants, and you'd move them through sort of slowly, and so that when they did get to be technicians or technical salespeople, or I don't know, programmers and coders or whatever, then they'd been trained and brought through the system, so that they would be fully productive employees. That wasn't thought about. It was quite the opposite. So this is me encountering that, you know, angry Jewish lesbians were being appointed as HR directors, and their mission was to get rid of as many straight white men as possible and hire as many non-straight white men as possible. And they went about, so the people that they were the people they were hiring, they were so desperate just to not hire straight white males that they were hiring these women as technical sales representatives, and they were fully dressed up in vampy makeup and gothic stuff. It was sad to see, and the standards, of course, plummeted, so that the technical standards and the standards across the board declined precipitously, and at the same time, massive HR departments were being built up. So IT and high tech became really the first initial ideological stomping ground of these people, and they've kept with that. They've stayed with that. So when I go to a large R&D organisation that's owned or part funded, if not primarily funded by a university that relies on government handouts, and they've developed, they're working on AI technology. Is their first priority to produce world-class, world-leading AI? No, their first priority is to make sure there's an equal number of men and women. There's an equal number of non-white and white. There's an equal number of gay, lesbian, and straight. You know, that's their priority, and making sure that the people, all the people there get all the goodies. Like if there's overseas trips going, it has to be equally divided up amongst, you know, LGBTQ and non-LGBT. You know, there are these sorts. So they've got these equity, top to bottom, left to right, you know, all every 360-degree in 3 dimensions equity programs going on. Now, the people they're inserting in there, they're not the ones who are going to do the heavy lifting on developing world-class AI. The people that would do it, the straight white males, are the ones that, you know, inevitably are going to produce it. And they don't really have much incentive to do it. Why should they do all the heavy lifting when, you know, when the media come around to maybe have a look at the AI program, and maybe one of the local politicians comes around to so on, the straight white males have actually done the work, are just pushed to one side, and they just want to have, you know, brown and black women in the photo op. You know, that's all they want. So eventually these guys think, I'm not sure it's even worth me doing the heavy lifting here. If those people are supposed to be getting the accolades, they can do the heavy lifting. The point is they can't. These black and brown women can't do anything. They're just there for the window dressing for social equity and equal outcomes and you know, socialist nirvanas and paradise there. And so this is pretty much wherever I go now, wherever, and I have a look at a lot of these. Wherever I go, this is what I see. That the emphasis isn't on world-class, first-class, kick-ass engineering. And even if it does start off that way, say a couple of white guys or, you know, straight white boys will produce some pretty snappy stuff in AI, but the minute it's identified, wow, that looks all right, then the crowd just piles in with, okay, black lesbians, you know, and they're just piling in on this just to try and create a social equity masterpiece, you know, and as they would see it. And so they just create these separate groups and departments and even set up separate businesses, and they just put it chock full of equity, social hanger-on parasites who are just there again as social engineering, leftist, globalist window dressing. So now I'm seeing this everywhere. Now most of the time, definitely most of the time, these projects just fall by the wayside because they loaded up with so much incompetence, so much parasites, so many parasites, that the money is all drained out of it before it gets anywhere, before it becomes commercial or a finished product or viable technology. It's just torn to pieces with all these social equity programs that they're brutally and aggressive. And because there's so much government money involved in these R&D programs, wherever the government's there, they insist there has to be a certain number of black lesbians and so on. And then the money that's not wasted on the equity programs is then absorbed through cronyism. If there's whatever else gets paid out as cronyism, where you see people employing their mistresses to be specialist recruitment advisors on big bucks and this sort of stuff. So they greedily and hungrily, like children in a chocolate store, they just grab everything they can as quickly as they can. And when the husk is empty and there's nothing there, nothing left there, they just walk away. Oh well, okay, on to the next gravy train. And so it's this is the story of pretty much every AI project I'm aware of. The wastage, the parasiting, the social equity is the first priority. But I've been to some talking about the AI program, and I doubt if you look at the top 10 priorities of the people involved, I doubt producing world-class kick-ass AI is even in the top 10. That they go, oh no, we have to have women, we have lesbians, we have to have black, we have to this, we have the equity programs take up all the priorities that these projects have. And again, the whole purpose of the project is produce world-class AI. But that's like, and they just don't care about it, and then they spend the money as quickly as they can. Now, this is not simply the fault of ideological fanatics and ideologues. A heavyweight commercial, executive in the universities or the R&D groups, hey, none of this equity bullshit, But then I don't know, would a person like that even have their job for very long? Would they be allowed to keep it as a commercial project and not a social equity project? I'm not sure they would. They'd be thrown out, and so more amenable and compliant would be brought in, or there'd be stories leaked in the press that they were secretly Nazis or something. You can imagine the social equity and high technology have merged into one in the Western world, whereas that's not the case in India or China. And the Chinese are thus able, even though they're the best and brightest IT nerds in the world are produced in the United States, so and other Western countries. So the raw material to get it done is here in the West. It's here. All they have to do is utilize it and organize it. That's all they have to do. But in China, where I don't think they've got that same high quality, and certainly not the same the same background and pedigree and this sort of thing, because they don't have these ridiculous equity programs to be concerned about, they're able to maybe go on a relative basis much further than they would have if the West had been focused on doing the job instead, as I mentioned, of equity programs. There's a second issue of organisation here, which is also very important. Just to illustrate the point, during World War II, as an example, as that was kicking off, the technology in tanks and weaponry generally was not that far apart. The battlefield weaponry, the Germans were pulling ahead in submarines and so on, but the battlefield weaponry of things like tanks and the like, they weren't really that far apart. They were comparable. Some of the French tanks, the Char-B, were quite good. The German tanks by 1940 were already really just on the verge of being outdated. They were already sort of yesterday's technology, and the British tanks were a bit behind, but and the British perceived tanks as very much infantry support vehicles rather than striking armor columns. But the Germans used the Wehrmacht. The Germans used their tank columns and the weapons they had. But their level of organizational skill, application, and deployment was vastly ahead of anything that the British and the French were doing. It was miles ahead, and it was that gave the Wehrmacht the edge, allowed them to defeat the French and British armies so quickly in 1940. So it's not just a matter of cutting smart AI code or something. It's not just that. It's the entire organization of the vehicles that are used to develop the AI in the first instance. How will that AI be applied into the wider economy, and again into weapon systems and into all sorts of various applications, manufacturing, and the list goes on. And so it's not simply a matter of developing technology, but how it's applied and how it's produced organizationally. And that's an area where, again, the West has lost whatever advantage it's had because it's so obsessed with fucking social engineering. You've been a task us today, your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.